I think that Jesse's conscience is probably not letting him sleep right now, so I think he should unload that conscience and just come out and tell the American people what actually happened.
Lots happening for you this morning. It is Thursday, February 21st, and this is Fox and Friends First. Happening right now at 4 a.m. here on the East Coast. This Fox News alert for you. The tables have turned. Empire star Jussie Smollett now facing criminal charges, and it could be just the beginning. The breaking developments and what could come next for the actor. And the hits just keep coming for the FBI. The Bureau's former top lawyer now admits that he wanted Hillary Clinton charged in the private email scandal. So who talked him out of it? And Honest Abs, the statue of our former president that is lighting up social media. Fox and Friends First starts right now. Now it's a little bit icy and messy out there. We'll check out the weather across the country coming up. You're watching Fox and Friends First on this Thursday morning. I'm Heather Childers. Thank you so much, as always, for starting your day with us. And did you hear about this Fox News alert? Empire actor Jussie Smollett charged with a felony for allegedly staging a hate crime attack. Now, he is due in court for a bond hearing in Chicago this afternoon. Prosecutors say that he filed a false police report claiming masked men put a noose around his neck, poured chemicals on him, and shouted MAGA country, along with racial and homophobic slurs. If convicted, Smollett could spend 3 years in prison. But his attorneys say he, quote, enjoys the presumption of innocence. Now, the bombshell charges, they come after surveillance video came to light showing a pair of brothers buying red hats and ski masks just hours before the alleged attack. Those brothers, questioned by police, have claimed Smollett paid them to stage the assault. Their lawyer says the actor needs to come clean.
I think Jussie Smollett should come clear because the truth will set him free. I think that Jussie's conscience is probably not letting him sleep right now, so I think he should unload that conscience and just come out and tell the American people what actually happened.
Well, Empire producers are reportedly considering suspending Smollett from the show as the investigation unfolds, and we'll have much more on this coming up. Well, Jussie Smollett's story quickly, of course, went viral with the help of Hollywood stars and Democratic politicians. Katie Pavlich, news editor for townhall.com, says that their calls for justice not only validated Smollett's claims, but they put a target on anyone who supports President Trump.
The left has used identity politics for decades to divide and conquer in this country. When you throw in a media narrative that assumes that anybody who accuses a MAGA supporter of any kind of wrongdoing, that person is guilty, that only adds fuel to the fire. And the truth is that journalists in this country, at the highest levels in this case, they didn't always use alleged. They in fact smeared the entire country and said, this is America in 2019, this is the situation. Journalists should not be assigning innocence or blame based on gender and skin color. They should be assigning it based on the facts. And the issue here is not necessarily believing his initial story as a victim when it came forward. It was painting all MAGA Trump supporters as racist, as they have done since Donald Trump took office in 2016.
Well, during the investigation, Chicago police dedicated 24 detectives to the Smollett case. New overnight for you, the FBI's former top lawyer wanted to charge Hillary Clinton over her private email use, but was apparently talked out of it. Fox News confirming that James Baker admitted this, and it came in a closed-door testimony on Capitol Hill.
And he continued to battle, according to his own testimony, with people in his office, along with Comey as well. He had these arguments going back and forth until the very end.
Well, despite calling Clinton's private email use, quote, alarming and appalling, Baker told lawmakers that he was convinced to change his mind after arguments with senior colleagues. Now, this is important because the FBI has consistently claimed top officials agreed with former Director James Comey's decision to not pursue charges against Clinton. A special counsel Robert Mueller's probe is expected to wrap up, possibly as early as next week. Sources telling Fox News that recent shakeups at the Justice Department are a sign that the investigation is winding down. Meanwhile, President Trump is slamming the former acting director of the FBI, Andrew McCabe.
I think Andrew McCabe has made a fool out of himself over the last couple of days, and he really looks to me like sort of a poor man's J. Edgar Hoover. I think he's a disaster.
Well, McCabe has, of course, done several TV interviews recently where he has opened up about launching investigations into President Trump and alleged Russian ties. He's even suggested that the president would be a Russian agent. Well, a brand new wave of migrants arrived at the Mexican border ready to cross into the U.S., and they're now camped out near the same border wall that potential 2020 candidate Beto O'Rourke wants to destroy. Griff Jenkins is live for us on the ground in Mexico with the caravan as those migrants prepare to start their day. Good morning, Griff.
Hey, good morning, Heather. Yeah, border cities just like this one, Ciudad Juarez, are being flooded with migrants because of the repeated caravans. Just yesterday, Mexican officials saying that a new caravan of more than 1,000 people clashed with officials of Mexico's southern border and came across here. But this here, the Casa del Migrante, is one of two shelters here in Ciudad Juarez that's being flooded. You can see there is a small police presence here in the barbed wire fence. They're trying to put them in a secure area. But if you look at the other shelter across town that we got into, you can see, excuse me, more than 600 or 700 people sleeping there trying to get processed because they're waiting for the asylum. Now, let me show you in El Paso the numbers, that the overwhelming border impact they're getting here. They're seeing a 478% increase in the El Paso sector. In this year, fiscal year 19, they've already, as of this week, had 43,238 illegal crossing apprehensions. Compared to last year, fiscal year 18, that's 7,481. Meanwhile, you also are in a town of a lot of violence, and we talked to one of the migrants here that said that he's worried about immigration, he's worried about the cartels, and he says, by the way, it's still okay if they take down the wall. He just doesn't want a wall on the southern part of Mexico. Listen, this is Randy Davidson. When you hear the Democrat candidates say, take the wall down, there should not be a wall, how do you feel about that?
Very comfortable. I guess if you ask many people here what they feel about that, they're going to say, that's like very comfortable.
Take the wall down.
Take the wall down.
And Heather, Randy's not comfortable at the violence in this city, Ciudad Juarez, once the most violent cities in the world. They are seeing a 6-year high in terms of the murder rate that's increasing. Meanwhile, the DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen was in El Salvador yesterday meeting with regional ministers trying to get some sort of agreement on what to do with this irregular migration. Heather?
All right, we'll have much more on this throughout the day as well. Griff, thank you so much, as always, for your coverage down there. Well, a Coast Guard lieutenant accused of plotting a mass terror attack on the U.S. is due in court today. Now, prosecutors say that Christopher Paul Hassan had a hit list of possible targets, including Democratic leaders and journalists. He also wanted to kill, quote, every last person on Earth. The self-proclaimed white nationalist stockpiling 15 firearms with more than 1,000 rounds of ammunition in his basement in Maryland. He is facing weapons and drugs charges, but officials say that that is just the tip of the iceberg. And the Trump administration refusing to allow an American ISIS bride into the United States. Hoda Muthana left Alabama to join the terror group in Syria back in 2014. And now she's begging to come back home with her 18-month-old son. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says that she's not even an American citizen, writing this in part. She does not have any legal basis, no valid U.S. passport, no right to a passport, nor any visa to travel to the United States. Her family lawyer denies that claim, saying that she is a citizen and that she was born in New Jersey. The reason the State Department does not consider her a citizen is because her father was a diplomat. Well, this is a live look at the Vatican, where Pope Francis is hosting a summit to address sexual abuse in the Catholic Church. Starting today, church leaders from around the world are meeting with high-ranking Vatican officials to focus on ways to move forward. The 4-day summit will address transparency, the responsibility of bishops, and holding church leaders accountable. And today, Roger Stone heads to court to address a threatening photo of a federal judge. President Trump's former advisor has apologized for posting the picture on Instagram showing Judge Amy Berman Jackson next to crosshairs of a gun. Well, she is now considering whether to revoke his release or his limited gag order. Stone has pleaded not guilty to lying to Congress and witness tampering in the Russia probe. Well, it is now about 15 minutes after the top of the hour, and the expected release of Robert Mueller's report on Russia has many asking, what comes next? Will anyone else be charged? Attorney David Bruno says Democrats will be extremely disappointed, and he is here live to explain why. And thanks for nothing, a Times Square billboard slamming Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, how the freshman congresswoman just responded overnight.
Will the report be released while you're abroad next week?
That'll be totally up to the new Attorney General. He's a tremendous man, a tremendous person who really respects this country and respects the Justice Department. So that'll be totally up to him.
Well, after nearly 2 years, the Mueller probe may finally be coming to an end. We've heard that before, though. The special counsel's report could be submitted as early as next week. So what can we expect? Here to discuss is criminal defense attorney David Bruno. David, we've had this conversation plenty of times.
Yes, we have.
But what about the timing of this? Let's just begin there next week, because obviously the president will be in Vietnam for the North Korea summit. William Barr just having taken over. What is going on here?
Yeah, I think it's the Barr nomination that's most important to point out, because Rod Rosenstein was running this investigation only because AG Sessions had recused himself.
Right.
Now that Barr comes in, he is in fact the leader of this investigation. So it's up to him to run it, and he could have said, end it. Or it could have been time. It could have been Mueller's time where naturally this came to an end. But we just won't know at this point. But there have been reports that this is going to close out next week. And let's just be careful, because we've heard this before. And I will believe it when I see it.
In terms of, we were just talking about this during the commercial break, though, because people will say, well, William Barr's coming in there, he's protecting the president, he's wrapping it up before it's complete. Could he have done that if Mueller's side of it was not complete?
Yes.
He could have.
Yes,
Okay.
because Rosenstein was only running this because of the recusal. Now Barr is the Attorney General. The buck stops at the end with William Barr. So, yeah, but I don't think that's the case, because that will be political suicide, because ultimately this will come out. There are going to be many questions asked about this report, why it ended, and I just don't think that they would go down that road.
And what do you think will come out? What will the public be privy to next week if it happens?
That's the big question. The regulations, the federal regulations say that Mueller has to give a confidential report to AG William Barr. Thereafter, it's his discretion, and the federal regulation says that the briefing to Congress is brief.
Well,
so there's no requirement that he has to give verbatim the same report that he gets from Mueller.
Well, I know you said be careful, but the rumor is that it's showing nothing, that there is no collusion. I want to talk to you about this, though. James Comey, the FBI's obviously top lawyer, James Baker, I should say, wanted to charge Hillary Clinton over her private email server, but was talked out of it.
Yeah, well, when Comey gave his press conference announcing no charges, one of the things he said was no reasonable prosecutor would agree to bring these criminal charges. Now, many of us, including myself, jumped out and said, no, we disagree with that. But now we're learning that there was actually a reasonable prosecutor in the room. You know, there was Baker there saying that there's enough to charge, reportedly. And if that's the case, it just debunks that public statement of James
That
Comey.
they all agreed with him.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens next with this? Anything?
Well,
Does it even matter?
on the Clinton email,
Yeah.
there's plenty. Listen, the House is controlled by Democrats, and they will do everything that they can to further investigate Russian interference. Let's not forget, Senate is controlled by the Republicans, so they still have the ability to investigate. I would expect an investigation on the Russian interference investigation, including Hillary Clinton. I don't think that story is going away anytime soon with the Republicans controlling the Senate.
Yeah, Russian interference going all the way back to Uranium One.
Mueller's been here for 2 years, but let's not forget the investigation was opened in 2016. We're coming up to 4 years now where this has been being looked at.
All right, we'll see what happens next week, if anything.
Yeah.
Because, as you said, we've heard it before. We'll have you come back. Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Well, the time now is about 18 minutes after the top of the hour, and Colin Kaepernick just settled his grievance with the NFL for reported $80 million, and now Nike is honoring him as an icon. Well, it's the New Jersey everyone is talking about, and Carly Shimkus is sharing reaction up next.
You come behind
Suspect Jussie Smollett now charged with a felony as his story about that alleged hate attack continues to spiral. Carly Shimkus with Fox News Headlines 24/7 Sirius XM 115 is here with the online reaction. This was blowing up social media, but interestingly enough, not trending on Twitter.
Yeah, well, listen, there was a lot of reaction to this and a lot of anger among people on social media. The case really shifted when investigators spoke to the two brothers, and now their attorney is really encouraging Smollett, in her opinion, to come clean. Smollett's attorneys responded saying detectives will make contact with his legal team to negotiate a reasonable surrender for arrest. That's actually the Chicago Police Department saying that he's
supposed to be there, I think, by 1:30 this afternoon.
Yeah, I believe that's Central Time. Now, Smollett's attorneys defended him, saying Mr. Smollett enjoys the presumption of innocence, particularly when it has been an investigation like this one, where information, both true and false, has been repeatedly leaked. Now, let's get to the social media reaction on this, because like I said, a lot of people are very angry right now. Gregory says, "Thank you, Chicago police. Throw the book at him for wasting police time. Your faithful officers have enough to do instead of going on a wild goose chase." Conservative commentator Charlie Kirk also saying, "Imagine hating a president so much you first try to send yourself a hateful letter to get attention. Once that doesn't work, you hire two guys to stage a hate crime, rehearse it, fail miserably in the execution of it, still go with the hoax, then lie about it till you get arrested." Smollett has maintained his innocence throughout this whole thing, but he does face a possibility of 1 to 3 years.
Yeah, and federal charges related to the letter, if he was involved in that, the letter that he allegedly or possibly sent to himself. Threatening letter. So let's talk about Nike, though. Releasing this limited edition Colin Kaepernick jersey after this huge NFL settlement.
Bingo! And Kaepernick, he promoted that jersey on Twitter, saying, "For those true to themselves on and off the field, proudly, unapologetically, and against all odds, this is only the beginning." You saw a photo of the jersey there. Nike released a statement on this new partnership saying, "We believe Colin Kaepernick is one of the most inspirational athletes of this generation who has leveraged the power of sport to help move the world forward." Like everything related to Colin Kaepernick, this has polarized social media. One Twitter user says, "I hope nobody wastes their money on this." Patrick tweets, "As they've been saying, it's all about the money." And Thomas on Facebook says, "I will save my money for a jersey from a player that's accomplished something on the field, not in the media." Well, guess what? A whole lot of people did buy it. Just a few hours ago, Kaepernick posted a tweet saying, "The jersey sold out."
Wow, okay. But very polarizing. Possibly going to my Carolina Panthers. Mixed feelings on that from people.
It will be amazing if he plays football again after all this.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I think he wants to, obviously. So finally, what in the world? Why is all I have to say about this shirtless ape?
Ryan tweets, "Is he trying to get Justice to take off her blindfold?" Oh my. And
or
another Twitter user says, "A separation of shirt and state." This is where social media is at its best, with all of these funny responses.
Clever.
This isn't a new statue either. It's been there since the 1930s.
People just now noticing, though.
Very uncomfortable.
1930s. All right, thank you so much, Carly. Appreciate it. Well, the time now is about 26 minutes after the top of the hour. Vladimir Putin, this kind of got buried, threatening to target the U.S. if missiles are deployed to Europe. So how should the U.S. respond? This is an important story. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis says if we're too aggressive, it could backfire. He joins us live to explain. And who thought this was a good idea? The zoo letting kids play tug of war with lions and tigers.
The The FBI got involved to investigate a threatening letter sent to Smollett at the Empire Studios January 18th. According to police records, letters cut out from a magazine spelled out, among other things, "You will die, black homophobic slur." In place of the return address, the letters MAGA in red pen. The letter was covered in a white powder which tested to be acetaminophen, also known as Tylenol. Police sources say a magazine with letters cut out is now part of the evidence seized when they searched the Chicago apartment of the Osundario brothers, who, according to police sources, rehearsed and executed the attack because they were paid by Smollett. Also taken from the apartment, bleach allegedly splashed on the actor, a receipt for a rope tied around his neck, and a red hat. Police have not specified how long they will wait for Smollett to show up. Criminal court experts say time is running out for the actor.
If he doesn't want to come in, he doesn't want to talk to the police, he doesn't want to give his side of the story, from what I understand, the second time, they're going to arrest him.
Police confirmed the Osundario brothers were at the Cook County Criminal Courts building today. Their lawyer was spotted going into the grand jury room. Police say it was a meeting with police and prosecutors, not the grand jury, at least not yet. Brett?
Mike Tobin in Chicago. Mike, thanks. Up next, Democrat presidential candidates chasing big money from the very people they're bashing on the campaign trail. Happens every 4 years. We'll bring you that story. First, beyond our borders tonight, Mexican immigration officials confirmed to Fox News they've identified and deported 25 gang members affiliated with MS-13, concealed within the caravan of 1,600 Central American migrants just across the border from Eagle Pass, Texas. A total of 70 Central American migrants have been deported to their home countries. About 1,500 have been granted humanitarian visas to move freely within Mexico. A Venezuelan official says the country is banning sea trips to and from 3 Dutch Caribbean islands. It's a region that has been linked to efforts to undermine President Nicolas Maduro by sending emergency aid to the South American nation. The indefinite shutdown of the maritime border applies to commercial and fishing boats between Venezuela and the islands of Curacao, Aruba, and Bonaire. Karl Lagerfeld, Chanel's iconic designer who designed unprecedented impact on the fashion industry throughout, died in Paris today. Lagerfeld, known for his trademark white ponytail, highly starched collar, and dark, enigmatic glasses, dominated high fashion for the past 50 years. Karl Lagerfeld was 85 years old. Just some of the other stories beyond our borders tonight. We'll be right back. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders says he will run for president again. Sanders lost the Democratic nomination to Hillary Clinton in 2016, of course, and he's promising a grassroots army of 1 million people this time. Many of his Democratic colleagues are also planning campaigns embracing the everyman and harshly critical of the rich. But national correspondent William Lajeunesse tells us many of those same Democrats are asking for a lot of money from the very people they're criticizing.
Stop handing out enormous tax giveaways to rich people.
We have a tax bill that got passed that gave $1 trillion to the top 1%. We should close those tax loopholes designed by and for the wealthy.
We need to start having a tax code in this country that reflects our values as a people. These Democrats attack the wealthy publicly. Privately, they seek them out. Senator Cory Booker received almost $6 million from lawyers and Wall Street, followed by real estate and entertainment. This week he's to attend a Silicon Valley fundraiser from an heir to the $13 billion Estee Lauder fortune. This is an election where the ultra-wealthy are going to pay more in contributions, pay more to super PACs, and ultimately, if the Democrats win, pay more in taxes. True, but the 1% often play the political punching bag, knowing their wealth is protected in a trust. Senator Elizabeth Ward wants candidates to reject all PAC money from corporations and wealthy donors, though she once appealed to a billionaire. Elizabeth Warren, a number of years ago, knocked on my door and asked me for money when she was running for the Senate. Senator Amy Klobuchar took almost $6 million from PACs in her career, 65% from corporations. Her largest donors are lawyers or executives from Delta, Cargill, Disney, and General Mills. Top donors to Senator Kamala Harris include big names from Silicon Valley and Hollywood, where she recently attended a fundraiser with millionaire studio execs.
Candidates who go to the top are going to pay for it in the polls in the Democratic primaries.
In the past, Democrats complained about inequality while wealthy supporters bankrolled their campaigns. Few seem to care. Senator Warren and Bernie Sanders could change that, or voters could look the other way, banking on the candidate with the best hope of beating President Trump. Brett?
William, thank you. New York freshman Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is taking the Democrats' campaign against the prosperous to new levels with her new Green Deal. Tonight we continue our week-long series examining this political manifesto. Correspondent Doug McElroy looks at the proposal's potential impacts on America's financial security.
It took only a week after the rollout of the Green New Deal that California Governor Gavin Newsom threw a wet blanket on a big part of it, drastically slashing his state's high-speed rail project.
Abandoning the high-speed rail entirely means we will have wasted billions and billions of dollars.
The projected cost ballooned from $10 billion to at least $77 billion today. A warning, some say, for the utopian vision of the Green New Deal.
I helped to co-found a Green New Deal about 15 years ago, and we did about $150 billion of investment in renewables, and a lot of that money was wasted, maybe most of it.
But even if the Green New Deal was fully implemented, how would it impact climate change?
If the United States disappeared from the planet right now, the effect on global temperatures would only be about 1/10 of a degree by 2100.
Germany provides a glimpse of a U.S. future with 100% renewable energy.
It will have spent $580 billion by 2025 on its transition to renewables, but its emissions have been flat over the last 10 years.
That's because wind and solar require fossil fuel backup when it's not windy or sunny. Germans pay roughly twice as much for electricity for households as neighboring France, which gets 75% of its power from nuclear. Wind and solar also require lots of land. Angry neighbors are vowing to kill this proposed huge solar array in Virginia, though it's already been stripped of trees. The Green New Deal also proposes retrofitting every building in the U.S.
How much would that cost?
One estimate puts it at $1.4 trillion for homes. Supporters argue it's an investment.
For every $1 that we spend on infrastructure, we get a return on that investment.
Sometimes the return is tragic. The Grenfell Tower in London was retrofitted with energy-saving cladding. When it caught fire in 2017, the cladding accelerated the blaze like kindling. 72 died. High-rise fires in Dubai were also worsened by cladding. There are better fire-resistant claddings, but they tend to be more expensive. Brett?
Doug, thanks. Tomorrow in our third installment, Doug takes a look at reports on what the Green New Deal could mean for agriculture and healthcare. The Dow closed up 8 points today. The S&P 500 rose 4. The Nasdaq finished ahead 14. Trust us. Bernie Sanders, meantime, is running for president again. We'll talk about whether it is his time or if his time has passed. The panel joins me after a break.
You may recall that in 2016, many of the ideas that I talked about, Medicare for all,
we have to get to universal health care in this country.
raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
If you're a minimum wage worker working full-time, you can't afford market rate for a one-bedroom apartment, we need to course correct.
Making public colleges and universities tuition-free.
We should offer debt-free college to anyone who wants to go out there and do it.
Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years? All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream.
So you're saying the party came your way?
Well, I don't want to say that. I think most people would say that.
Bernie Sanders is in. He is running for president. He joins a growing list. Who knows how big this list is going to be by when all is said and done. Those are the declared, the exploratory, essentially in, possibles over there. If you look at the Real Clear Politics average at the top 5 right now, and again, this is way early, but these are early polls. You see Joe Biden still leading the pack, Sanders in second, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, Beto O'Rourke, who's not in yet either. Let's bring in our panel. Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent of the Washington Examiner, Mara Liasson, National Political Correspondent of National Public Radio, and Matthew Cottonetti, Editor-in-Chief of the Washington Free Beacon. Okay, Mara, the question is the party going to absorb, like they did in 2016, the enthusiasm now that there are other younger acolytes who are essentially saying the same thing.
I mean, has kind of Bernie been a victim of his own success?
Exactly.
Yes. Why do you need a cranky old guy from Brooklyn when you can get these young, exciting people who agree with him on almost everything? So I think that there is something to be said for Bernie missed his moment, but he did shape the party, and I think he certainly can be proud of that, and he was remarkably modest where he said he didn't want to say that the party moved his way, but most people would. I think he's right. Now, not everyone wants Medicare for all right away. His bill absolutely gets rid of private insurance in one fell swoop. A lot of people want Medicare buy-in, but the point is that a lot of his ideas are being accepted widely, and I think the party does really want someone young and fresh.
Here's Senator Sanders and the president today.
The bottom line for me is I think it is absolutely imperative that Donald Trump be defeated, because I think it is unacceptable and un-American, to be frank with you, that we have a president who is a pathological liar.
Personally, I think he missed his time, but I like Bernie because he is one person that, on trade, he sort of would agree on trade, but I wish Bernie well. It'll be interesting to see how he does.
It is going to be interesting to see how he does. For the progressive side of this group, it is another big figure who's coming into this race.
Well, he was the big sensation of the Democratic race in 2016, but it is hard to recreate that. And part of the reason he was a sensation was because no big-name Democrat would challenge Hillary Clinton. Do you remember the first Democratic debate? It was Bernie and Clinton and Jim Webb and Lincoln Chafee. I mean, that was it. It was a very, very poor field. And progressive Democrats at the time did want somebody to talk about free college and about infrastructure and universal health care and all that stuff. And Mara's right. They have a bunch of people who are ready to talk about it now. And on the age issue, Bernie will be 79 years old on Election Day. That is older than Ronald Reagan was when he left office after 8 years. That is really, really pushing the limit.
The same as Joe Biden, though, right?
He's a little younger, but not much. A little younger, 76.
Isn't it? It's fascinating to see how this race is going to develop, because you have the possibility of Joe Biden getting in. You have Amy Klobuchar trying to play, I think, the practical Democrat, touching both sides of the party. And then you have Howard Schultz out there probably applauding Bernie Sanders getting in this race.
Right, and reminding Democrats in a Medium post this week that I'm not here to spoil the race. I'm here to present a viable alternative if the Democrats go far left. I think what's interesting, Brett, is Biden's reluctance to announce has created this vacuum on what you might call the business-friendly side of the Democratic Party. And so all the energy is now in that weather system that Bernie Sanders stirred up in 2016. He's drawing all the energy to the left. And you have poor Amy Klobuchar there saying, you know what, we can't all have college. I wish I was a genie, but we can't afford it. And she needs reinforcements. Otherwise, this will not be Barack Obama's party. It won't be Hillary Clinton's party. It will be Bernie Sanders' party, and that helps Donald Trump.
Here is Kamala Harris being asked about Democratic Socialist.
I am not a democratic socialist. I believe that what voters do want is they want to know that whoever is going to lead understands that in America today, not everyone has an equal opportunity to and access to a path to success.
And as Matthew mentioned, Amy Klobuchar last night.
Yes or no? Would you support free college for all?
I am not for free 4-year college for all. I wish if I was a magic genie and could give that to everyone and we could afford it, I would.
I mean, it seems like there's this aspiration, and then there's the realism, and this battle's going to be happening all throughout.
She said, I am not for free 4-year college for all. The definition of a right-winger in the Democratic Party is you're for free 2-year college for all, which she was, but is not for 4 years. So I do think, in terms of inspiring voters and getting people's attention, when you start saying things like, well, that's just not practical, we can't afford that kind of thing, that is not going to set the Democratic Party on fire.
Let me ask the question a different way. Go ahead.
Except Democrats want to beat Donald Trump. And this is a party that's in a pragmatic frame of mind. They're going to figure out who has the best chance. Since they're all pretty much similar ideologically, I think people are going to be voting with their heads as well as their hearts this year.
But in that case, isn't Bernie Sanders, in one case, an existential threat to that possibility of beating Donald Trump?
Haven't been acting very pragmatically, and it's very funny for Kamala Harris to say she's not a democratic socialist. She's been acting like one. I mean, what was her comment about eliminating private insurance? She's for Medicare for all. She's for the Green New Deal. She's going to be regretting a lot because she is slowly laying the predicate for Donald Trump to frame the 2020 election as a referendum, not on him, but on socialism. And that's a referendum he can win.
All right, next up, the confusion over Andrew McCabe and the latest.
Liberty Mutual customizes your... The purpose of the briefing was to let our congressional leadership know exactly what we've been doing. Opening a case of this nature, not something that an FBI director, not something that an acting FBI director would do by yourself, right? This was a recommendation that came to me from my team. I reviewed it with our lawyers. I discussed it at length with
Did you
the
tell
Deputy Attorney
Congress?
General, and I told Congress what we had done.
Did anyone object?
That's the important part here, Savannah. No one objected. Not on legal grounds, not on constitutional grounds, and not based on the facts.
Andrew McCabe out selling a book describing briefing Congress on this investigation opened up to the president, but the so-called Gang of Eight called this claim confusing at best, possibly misleading, because they knew months earlier that the FBI had effectively opened up a campaign, a investigation. We're told that. We're back with the panel. Byron, what about this and the fallout from it?
It is confusing because this allegedly happens in May of 2017, right after James Comey has been fired. But everybody in the Gang of Eight knew that earlier in July of 2016, the FBI had opened up an investigation into the Trump campaign. And I think most of the people in the Gang of Eight thought that covered Donald Trump as well. But I think there's one other really serious thing about this McCabe story, which is he keeps saying, I opened this investigation, it was a big deal, I told Congress about it, and to my knowledge, he has not been asked, what did you find? Did you find out the president was a Russian asset? Is he a threat to national security? Could you please tell us what you found? And he hasn't been saying much about that.
Here's McCabe back in May of 2017 talking about what he did do, which was fire the FBI director.
I don't believe there is a crisis of confidence in the leadership of the FBI. I suppose that's somewhat self-serving, and I apologize for that. It was completely within the president's authority to take the steps that he did. We all understand that.
I mean, obviously he's in a different position then. He's selling a book now. What about this?
It certainly was in the legal... The president had the right to fire the FBI director. That's what he's saying, which is absolutely true. I don't think he could have said anything else, really. I mean, it was absolutely in the president's authority to do that. What he does do in that quote is push back against the president's argument that Comey was hated inside the FBI, that there was a crisis of confidence, that the FBI wanted him gone, and he says, no, that isn't true.
New York Times story comes out today that says that the president called the acting attorney general, Matt Whitaker, and essentially asked if a U.S. Attorney Jeff Berman for the Southern District of New York could take over the widening investigation that included Cohen, and was told essentially no. This is the president on this New York Times story today.
I don't know who gave you that. Just more fake news. There's a lot of fake news out there. No, I didn't. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Whitaker. I think he's done a great job. It's a very, very straight shooter. I watched him during the hearing, some of it. I thought he was exceptional. He's a very fine man, and he should be given a lot of thanks by our nation.
Berman, ties to Rudy Giuliani, had stepped aside from overseeing that investigation.
And it should be investigated. The president denies it, so we need to find out what the facts are. I think the New York Times story is indicative of the larger pattern, which is so many of the details and narratives that we've learned about are being told by self-interested parties, whether it's James Comey, Andrew McCabe, or whoever gave this information to the New York Times. We have yet to hear from a neutral arbiter other than the Inspector General Horowitz in his report, which led to McCabe's denials today that he'd illegally leaked information. So who's the neutral arbiter? Well, we have a new Attorney General, Bill Barr, who is immensely qualified, and he's been in the job before. I think it's incumbent on him to kind of, maybe once Mueller is finished, to lay out all the facts, to say this is where DOJ, FBI went wrong, and this is how we're going to fix this situation.
The question is, and I've heard it more and more, is will we know everything? I mean, will we know the end of Mueller? Will we know the answers?
Well, that's a really good question, and a lot of people think we won't. There is no guarantee that Bob Mueller is going to write some exhaustive report that
or that Barr's going to pass it on.
Or the Barr will pass it on. I think once it's written, there's going to be tremendous pressure to pass it on. Something like 83% of Americans think the report, if it exists, should be released in its entirety. But we don't know what Bob Mueller is going to do. We don't know if the indictments are his court filings or his report. Is he going to write something exhaustive and answer all these questions? I think it's really important to get these questions answered.
In the Monica Lewinsky investigation, Ken Starr gave a report to Congress, and then he gave all of the grand jury testimony. Congress immediately made it all public. We need to do something like that.
He was required to do that.
We will see when we come back.